Coming in at number 10, we've got an honorable mention for the time that the immortal Hulk buried a similarly immortal villain alive within a mountain, in an incident that was a bit less embarrassing and a bit more existentially terrifying. While on the run, the Hulk found himself running into a mad scientist known as Dr. Fry, who had attempted to conquer death through the use of gamma radiation and had accidentally both poisoned his hometown and turned himself into a glowing skeletal creature that would cannibalize anyone stumbling across his mountain cave. Since he was unable to kill him, the Hulk wound up trapping Dr. Fry within his mountain cave without the use of his arms or legs, essentially burying him alive. Note to self: do not get on the Hulk's bad side while also being immortal. Coming in at number 9, we've got either the best or worst Hulk pun of all time used against the Red King. Following his exile from planet Earth, the Hulk found himself as a gladiator combatant on the planet Sakaar, battling in fights overseen by the cruel leader of the planet, Angmo Asan, aka the Red King. In a final battle to take back the planet, the Hulk led a force of rebels against their captors, and went head-to-head against the Red King inside his own arena in a sword duel to the death. And while the fight itself was pretty cool, the icing on the cake was the final pun as the Hulk defeated his foe with his sword and cried out, "Hulk slash." Coming in at number 8, we have the Incredible Hulk vs. Black Bolt, King of the Inhumans. Following the Hulk's extended stay on Sakaar, and following the death of the love that he'd found on the planet, the Hulk began making his way back to Earth to face off against the heroes that had sent him into the cosmos in the first place. He was intercepted on the Earth's moon by Black Bolt, who used his incredibly destructive voice to whisper enough at the Hulk when he refused to back down. An attack that likely would have killed anyone else, but left the Hulk still standing, grinning, and saying, "I didn't come here for a whisper, I want to hear you scream," which just might be the most badass thing ever dared to be said to Black Bolt.
Number 7, AVON calling. Not necessarily a great super villain of Wolverines per se, but in issue number 30 of the original Wolverine series, Wolverine managed to embarrass a whole team of Madripoorian militia and palace guards when he was dealing with the masterminds behind the Lazarus Project. As he and his allies aim to infiltrate the palace and confront General Koi, Broker, not to be confused with the Power Broker, and Dr. Page, Wolverine walks right up to the guard, and when he asks who goes there, answers, "AVON calling." Wolverine can be nonchalant and make jokes here because he's got Karma on his team. Rather than respond with an attack, Karma basically takes hold of the guard's mind and then has him take them into the palace under the guise of his prisoners. Of course, this ruse doesn't last for too long, but it does last long enough to get them into the palace at least, and to basically where they need to go. Number 6, Ruined Merchant's Auction. When Wolverine donned his patch disguise to return once more to Madripoor, it was quickly revealed to him that everyone kinda already knew who he was. And while he had come to save a former teammate from being auctioned off as a weapon, he himself ended up on the auctioning block. But although the merchant saw his presence as an opportunity, in the end he realized his mistake, as Wolverine didn't just get away with Maverick as intended, but pretty much ruined his whole auction and Merchant's whole catalog besides. You can check out how badly Wolverine ruined this party by checking out issues number 9 and 10 of the 2020 Wolverine series. Number 5, Resisted the Change. Wolverine's healing factor doesn't just protect him from severe injuries, it also protects him against supernatural related monster rules, such as how they dictate transformations. And if he does end up getting affected by said rules, the change is typically only temporary for him. Eventually his healing factor will basically cure him. Case in point, when Old Man Logan faced off with Dracula during his hunt for Jubilee. Dracula managed to attack Wolverine and even bite him in this second volume of Old Man Logan, but the joke was on Drac. Wolverine's healing factor protected him from giving into vampirism, and we learned that he was immune to said bite and its effects. Sorry, Dracula. In the end, Wolverine came out on top, managing to later on decapitate Dracula. Obviously, he came back, but for the Prince of Darkness, King of Lies, Lord of the Undead, this was a pretty embarrassing defeat. Especially as he bit him and then he was like, yes, this didn't work, but that's fine. I'm sure it's taking all of your healing factor to fight off the vampirism. I don't know if it was actually taking all of his healing factor. He did look a little rough, but I feel like Wolverine was like, yeah, sure, bub, all of my healing factor. Number 4, Bad Karaoke for Maverick and Merchant. Later on in the current Wolverine series, Maverick would take a job from Merchant, deciding in the end to work with him despite Merchant attempting to auction him off previously, and thereby putting Maverick in the crosshairs of Wolverine. With the two at odds fighting over information stored on a Krakoan bug, Wolverine in the end decided to let Maverick think he stole that bug back from him and his friend CIA agent Jeff Bannister, only for Maverick to learn later while handing it over to Merchant that the bug was actually wiped clean and the information on it replaced with tons of Johnny Cash karaoke, likely taken from performances at the Green Lagoon's karaoke night. Oh boy.
Coming in at number 3, we have the Hulk killing Maestro with the explosion that created him in the first place. Bruce Banner often has to face off against different mental versions of the Hulk inside his head, but this alternate version of himself from a post-apocalyptic future is the real deal. Naming himself Maestro after conquering what remains of America following a nuclear winter, this version of the Hulk had become far stronger than the Hulk's usual starting strength, with years of sucking up deadly radiation only improving his ferocity and power. When the real Hulk encountered this warlord version of himself, the only way he was able to finally come out on top was by literally warping the Maestro back in time to be killed by the same gamma bomb that created the Hulk back in the 60s. A nice bit of circular karma that showed that Bruce Banner could outwit even his older self. Coming in at number 2, we have Zombie Hulk versus Zombie Thanos. The Hulk and Thanos might not have gotten to get a proper physical rematch in the MCU, but in the Marvel multiverse, their zombie versions had a fight that has to be seen to be believed. 40 years after the initial infection that turned their universe into an undead wasteland, a zombified Thanos decides to pick a fight with an undead Hulk, claiming that the Hulk has eaten more flesh than his fair share. With the eloquence that only a zombie can provide, the Hulk responded by crushing Thanos' skull between his clapping palms, instantly destroying the weakened Mad Titan and showing that maybe you shouldn't tell the Hulk he's been eating too much lately.
At number 10, it is the time when Iron Man almost kills a non-Cyttorak powered Juggernaut. In this exchange, Juggernaut is on a tear, and Thor, Ghost, Luke Cage, and Iron Man appear to try and put a stop to him. Iron Man warns Juggernaut with total confidence to stand down cause the numbers are against him. Juggernaut then basically hits L2 and activates his taunt saying, "Then it's almost even." Should not have said that. So instead of humoring any more of this back and forth, Iron Man promptly follows through with his threat and blasts Juggernaut, almost killing him. The blast he hits him with is a sonic beam that he's used before to put down a whole regiment. The attack injures Juggernaut so badly that he's basically like steaming and bleeding from every orifice on his face. It's so bad that Luke Cage has to stop Iron Man before he kills the Juggernaut there and then. And it's pretty clear that Juggernaut had no idea that Iron Man would dominate the battle this much. And it becomes one of the many moments where Iron Man is able to come through and show everyone that he's not only one of the most powerful in the room, but that he's also willing to follow through. Okay, at number 9, we have the time when Iron Man is called to free hostages from an enclosure made of adamantium and vibranium, two of the strongest materials in the known universe. Remember, adamantium is the metal that reinforces Wolverine's skeleton and what his claws are made of, and vibranium is what Black Panther's weapons are made of, which can absorb and amplify sonic energy. So when Cardiac traps his hostages in a massive enclosure made of these materials, he clearly doesn't believe that there's any chance anyone could thwart his plans. But when Iron Man arrives on scene, he promptly backs himself up and basically turns his body into a human missile, rocketing towards the enclosure and busting a huge hole in it with his fist. This allows oxygen to enter the chamber, giving the team much more time to eventually save the hostages entirely. He does break his arm and a few ribs, but once again, he takes a villain's confidence and absolutely shatters it with his supreme power and iron will. At number 8, we have an event that is counted widely as one of Iron Man's most powerful feats. Mandarin and Iron Man find themselves facing off against a common enemy, an army of dragons led by Fin Fang Foom and Chen Su. And the dragons seem to be winning. After some pretty close calls, Iron Man and Mandarin seem to be at a stalemate, realizing that the dragons are just not letting up. At this very moment, Chen Su morphs back into dragon form and makes a final appeal to Mandarin for the rings, citing their power and how he is ill-equipped to control them himself. Iron Man realizes that this may be true, but that he is much more than a man, so he could himself unleash the true power of the rings, and he does. He grabs Mandarin's hands and unleashes an enormous explosion that levels a few mountain ranges as well as Fin Fang Foom and Chen Su in one go. This is another moment where a major enemy underestimates Iron Man's superhuman abilities and pays the price for it.
Coming in at number 7, we have the Ultimate Hulk literally eating Herr Kaiser. As one of the first major enemies faced by the Ultimate Superhero Team, Kaiser was a Chitauri warrior that had infiltrated Earth during the Second World War and was able to fight toe-to-toe with both Nick Fury and the Super Serum enhanced Captain America. As a last-ditch effort to defeat the villain, the Ultimates unleashed the Hulk to defeat their shape-shifting foe, who decided to ensure Kaiser could never return by eating his corpse and then destroying the feces that resulted from the meal. There's overkill, and then there's being overkilled by the Hulk. Coming in at number 6, we have the Ultimate Hulk versus Ultimate Abomination. In another example of the Ultimate Hulk being vicious as hell, the Abomination was an attempt to recreate the conditions that had made the Hulk, but hoping to improve the process and allow him to be controlled. The Abomination had all of the Hulk's strength, but retained all of his human brain power after the transformation, which was intended to help the Abomination permanently put down the Hulk, but still led to Abomination being absolutely torn to shreds, with the Hulk adding salt to the wound by claiming, "You think too much," a final backhanded insult to show that being smarter isn't always going to lead to better outcomes. Coming in at number 5, we have the original Marvel Universe's Hulk versus Abomination, which somehow manages to be even more of a complete victory than the Ultimate versions. After Abomination was blamed for the death of Bruce Banner's wife, Betty Ross, the Hulk went on a complete rampage to destroy Abomination, something the villain intended to finally figure out which of the two green giants was stronger. But in a final humiliating moment, the Hulk had the opportunity to finally kill Abomination, but instead chose to revert back to Bruce Banner, showing his humanity and proving to Abomination that Banner had the strongest willpower of all, the ultimate defeat for Abomination. Coming in at number 4, we have Hulk smashing Loki in the original MCU Avengers film. For years, comic book fans had been yearning to see a proper adaptation of the Jade Giant on screen. And while earlier live-action Hulk films were ambitious in their own ways and had their own unique moments, the most iconic and defining Hulk moment finally came when the Hulk joined the Avengers in their first team-up movie and interrupted Loki's monologuing to give him the beatdown he deserved. This was the Hulk we'd all been waiting to see, and hearing Cap tell him to smash, or the Hulk saying "puny god," they were definitely worth the wait.
Which brings us to number 3, when Iron Man totally humiliates this fleet of guys wearing power suits that they think could combat his own. With their suits having the same firepower as some small countries, they expect there's no way Tony Stark could match up against them. In fact, Tony is even wearing his classic armor, which isn't quite as powerful as his updated suit, so they even have a better chance than usual to even the score. And still, they're made to look like fools as Iron Man easily evades their heat-seeking missiles and diverts them to actually backfire and destroy the armored assailants themselves. It's just an absolute joke watching him face off against these guys, carrying them around like they're action figures and throwing insults at them, and they seem so confident. That's what kills me about this list, is how confident all these villains are before Iron Man shows them who's boss. It just makes the wins all more embarrassing when they come. Okay, nearing the top of our list at number 2, we have the iconic face-off between Iron Man and Captain America. During the Civil War conflict, the Avengers are split into 2 different factions, one side being led by Captain America, the other by Iron Man. And as tensions escalate on either side, it finally culminates to a big battle between the 2 sides, and of course between Iron Man and Captain America themselves. But like everyone else on this list, Captain America somehow underestimates Tony Stark when he tries to pull a fast one on him and disable his armor. After what seems like a conciliatory handshake between Iron Man and Captain America, Tony notices a small electron scrambler device on his hand, leaving him open to a blow by Cap's shield right to the face. But as Iron Man is laying on the ground, petrified, he simply reboots his armor and gets back up. I don't think Captain America expects this either, because Iron Man flies at him and after an effortless fist fight, knocks him to the ground, almost severing his jaw with one massive punch in the face. This is high up on the list because Captain America is a very skilled strategist, and watching him get shown up so hard like this has to be pretty humiliating, especially in front of all his peers like that. Oof. At number 1, it is the face-off that Iron Man has against Magneto during the Avengers vs. X-Men storyline. This event takes the top of the list because of the irony. Get it? Iron-y? The irony of this particular face-off, given that Magneto manipulates metal and Iron Man is made of it. Fans had been anticipating this face-off for some time, so when it came, everyone expected Magneto to take the W. And that includes Magneto himself. But in classic ingenious Iron Man fashion, Tony Stark shows up to the fight with a special non-metal armor made out of nanotubes, stealing this huge advantage from Magneto. But that's not where it ends. Iron Man then harnesses the power of Jupiter's magnetic field to power up his armor and take down the magnetic supervillain. And while Magneto is coming back for one final attempt, he's distracted by Phoenix Force, giving Iron Man the chance to knock him out properly this time. This is a huge embarrassment for Magneto since he's the obvious choice for this battle. It might take some time to recover from that one, and I'm not just talking about his physical wounds.
Number 10, General Koi and Prince Baran get spooked. Wrapping up the events involving Terra Verde's civil unrest and the face-off with Spore in issue number 23 of the original Wolverine series, Wolverine decided upon his return to Madripoor that it was time to give General Koi and Prince Baran a taste of their own medicine. While Prince Baran was a sometimes ally of Wolverine's, for this story he was more playing the role of sometimes villain or antagonist that he's also known for in the series. As such, in the middle of the night, Wolverine pays a visit to both men and kidnaps them. They awaken blindfolded in the sewers, where Wolverine explains the extent of what can happen if the vial of the drug that Koi chose to keep were unleashed on someone, how it would basically make them go insane. It could also potentially unleash a darker evil who was only just defeated, Spore. Really not cool for you to keep that vial, Koi. Koi and Baran fear that Wolverine has administered the drug to them, terrified. They discover, however, that this is not the case, and instead that the only threat in these sewers is an equally deadly and very angry Wolverine. Horrified, they run in fear and escape from the sewers, only to be laughed at by the people of Madripoor as they surface, covered in sewage. Hopefully they learn their lesson. Knowing General Koi though, probably not, because then he does a lot of other stuff. Number 9, unintentionally embarrassed Sabretooth. Sure, Wolverine is all for putting Victor in his place. Once he met the guy and knew how bad he was, that is. But before that, the Creeds were just a family that Wolverine kinda got tied up in. Logan ended up captured and in a circus being used as an attraction. Something about the X-Men and circuses, I tell you, it happens a lot. This was really a low point in Wolverine's life as he was suffering from severe depression after the death of Rose, and then following that, the death of his wolf pack by Nathaniel Essex's Bear, which was really upsetting because he'd taken a lot of solace in his pack. In the end, it was Clara Creed who managed to reach out to Logan, saving him both physically and emotionally. The two fell in love with one another quickly, but it didn't end well for either of them. Saul Creed, Clara's little brother, sold them out. Once this was revealed, Logan felt the only way to protect Clara was to get rid of Saul, permanently. Clara was ready to cut Saul out of her life, but didn't want to see him killed. Because Logan killed Saul, she rejected him. And because Logan killed Saul, Victor interpreted it as a slight, embarrassed that Logan had been the one to kill Saul, as Saul was Victor's to torment. Victor would visit Saul each year on his birthday to beat him up. So yeah, hence why Sabretooth visits Wolverine each year now instead, because he was like, how dare you do this to me? This is unacceptable. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want to hear about more times that Wolverine kind of embarrassed his villains intentionally and unintentionally, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8, blew up Dracula. If you've been surprised by Dracula appearing as a Wolverine villain in his current 2020 series, don't be. These two actually have a lot of history, and the mutants themselves have also tangled with vampires in general in the past. Old Man Logan even faced Dracula before, when mutants were disappearing and he was on the trail of tracking down his good pal and one of his sidekicks back in the day, Jubilee. This time around, however, Dracula seems to be interested in harnessing Wolverine's blood for its healing properties, and using the blood to help all vampires walk in the daylight without danger of going up in flames and perishing. Wolverine, however, literally blew up Dracula's well-laid plans when he took part in a plan to turn his body into a bomb. Well, more a devoid of consciousness clone body. This body was then offered to Dracula by his less than faithful servant Omega Red, which means instead of walking in the daylight, much of Drax's following instead went up in smoke, as Wolverine's clone's blood was altered to be like liquid sunshine to the vamps, thick with photonic cells, and so he became a dirty bomb. Or well, his clone became a dirty bomb.
At number 7, we have the time when Iron Man escapes the black hole created when GODKILLER self-destructs. What's embarrassing about this event is that GODKILLER's intentions are to take take Iron Man with it in the blast created by its own self-destruction. And it's very sure that it'll accomplish this task, considering Iron Man is aboard it. GODKILLER is basically a giant suit of armor, and Iron Man is in it. That's strangely hard to explain, but I think you know what I mean. And I don't blame GODKILLER for having high expectations for this final feat, considering the black hole it ends up creating is the size of Earth, meaning that it would have 24 times the mass of the sun. So that means that the only thing GODKILLER miscalculates, much like everyone else on this list, is Iron Man's strength, speed, and durability. And yeah, Iron Man comes flying out of the black hole, escaping the close call with his life completely intact. And that means that GODKILLER obliterates himself basically for nothing, allowing Iron Man to escape to safety, despite the pull of 24 suns on his back. GODKILLER gets absolutely owned here, but at least he's not alone. He's got the other 9 villains on this list to talk it out with. At number 6 is the time when Iron Man unhinges a plan set by the ROXXON Corporation when they detonate a deposit of vibranium to try and destroy a fleet of battleships. Basically, going back, it starts with a battle between Iron Man and Namor, which is interrupted by the realization that ROXXON is trying to gain control of a whole island due to a deposit of the highly valuable metal vibranium mentioned earlier. When a group of battleships close in to prevent this from taking place, the corrupt corporation decides to detonate the vibranium so that no one can have it. And it seems to be part of the plan to destroy these battleships in the process. But what does Iron Man do? He decides he wants to control the narrative and physically tows the 5 battleships away from the explosion. This makes it so ROXXON just destroys the vibranium for no reason. And Iron Man does this with one of his old armors too. He can't help but show everyone that he has the strength to change everyone's plan at any given time and leave them in the dust wondering what happened. Okay, at number 4 is the time when Iron Man fractures the Phoenix Force with his Phoenix Buster armor. Now, I'm not sure if the Phoenix Force can physically feel anything, let alone embarrassment, considering it's a cosmic entity powerful enough to shatter whole worlds like glass, but if it could, its face would be red and hot after Iron Man absolutely wrecks Phoenix Force, forcing it to split up into 5 pieces. And the Phoenix Force isn't the only one who should be feeling the burn from this huge win by Iron Man. Thor even fails to take down Phoenix Force with his hammer right before Tony succeeds at it. So Iron Man is just showing everyone up in this event. And this is a huge event that had been building up for a while. Phoenix Force had been posing a huge threat to the X-Men and the Avengers in this storyline. So Iron Man just showing up and blowing it up into a bunch of pieces is pretty humiliating for such a powerful being. I just like to picture Phoenix Force getting all geared up about taking out all these superheroes and then their plans having to change entirely after a little human in his own little armor appears to stop them in their tracks. It's just, yikes, wrecked.
Number 3, Omega Red versus the Wolverines. You mess with the Wolverine, you get a bunch of them that you have to deal with. You get all the Wolverines. As was evident when Omega Red came to Krakoa seeking to claim what his mutant given right was, to take refuge on the new mutant island nation. And, you know, not be condemned or anything, even though he did bad stuff in the past. However, not everyone was able to forgive and forget when it came to his past, namely Wolverine. Still suspicious of Omega Red, once it seemed as though he'd seen him appear outside of Krakoa and kind of trap him in ice, Wolverine was ready to confront him, already having an uneasy feeling about his former nemesis since pretty much day 1. However, when Wolverine explained what had happened to him, to his family, they weren't ready to let him go in alone. He was joined by Daken and Gabby, who both showed Omega Red how easy it was to sneak up on him and get him in a trap. In the end, the discussion had to be tabled, but it was pretty fun to see the look on his face when the Wolverine family came together to attack him. If you were wondering where Laura was, by the way, she'd likely still be in the vault at this time, as per her adventures in the 2019 X-Men series, which is why she wasn't there. Otherwise, I'm sure Laura would also be there. Number 2, found the perfect match for SOLEM. After it was revealed that SOLEM had taken Logan's Muramasa blade and ended up giving one such blade to the Iraqi pirate, Severe, during SOLEM's escape from him, Wolverine tracked SOLEM down. He confronted SOLEM and was convinced to take on Sever with him together. Later, SOLEM bailed on this confrontation in typical SOLEM fashion, it seems. However, Wolverine had a few tricks up his sleeve. Realizing that he and SOLEM were fairly even matched, he decided to call in some reinforcements. Wolverine went to the White Queen, Emma Frost, and had her join him in their confrontation of SOLEM, which she was happy to do as she had her own score to settle with him. They pursued SOLEM to the the sliver of remaining Araco Island on Earth where he was hiding out. And let's just say that while Wolverine and Solem could likely fight against one another all day to only really reach a stalemate, Emma was out of Solem's league. She interrogated him, much to his dismay and embarrassment, because Emma of course can easily access almost anyone's hidden dirty secrets and desires, no matter how dirty and secret and hidden they are. So now she knows everything about Solem, whether she wanted to or not. Number 1. Ultimate Family Jewels. Oh boy. Of course, a lot of embarrassing moments would come from the Ultimate Universe, wouldn't they? This one hails from issue number 12 of the Ultimate X-Men series. Here, Ultimate Wolverine and Ultimate Sabretooth face off, only for Wolverine to completely embarrass Victor in this fight. As Sabretooth holds Wolverine beneath the water, making him suffocate and killing his brain cells, Wolverine counterattacks by going for his, family jewels, as he calls them. His retort to Sabretooth mocking how he'll never be considered a brainiac now turns to tears and pain as Wolverine responds that at least he's smart enough to cover his family jewels in a fight before he tackles Sabretooth off a cliff. Wow, what a way to finish a fight.